Hey guys, welcome back to STVCastle Chess. Um, it's a good thing to get back to the chessboard, right? This is Stephen Vitt, of course, and I'm just going to present to you a chess game that I played recently. And like I've been saying before, I'm not an expert at all when it comes to playing chess. It's just a general passion of mine. Excuse me, my voice. It's just a general passion of mine to just play the game of chess and to really share with you what I've been doing, on the chessboard, playing games against people online. And before we begin, just give me 1 minute here. Yeah, sometimes I have to clear my voice because I just get a dry throat often. It happens. Anyway, probably won't edit that out. I'll just keep it in. Anyway, this game here I played recently, like a few days ago. It was against this guy with the username of Kieran Hyde, and Kieran Hyde, he has the black pieces. I have the white pieces. And what this game is going to illustrate is how both players handle the Scandinavian Defense opening. Now, the Scandinavian Defense, you're going to see it right out of the gate on move number one, how it's developed, and and more importantly, how you respond to it. If you're white, how do you respond to the Scandinavian defense? Because this is a staple defense that players use when they have the Black Army. And this is what Kieran Hyde plays, the Scandinavian defense. Now, sometimes I myself, I will play the Scandinavian defense, but most of the time I don't. I don't prefer to play that because it often involves you having to get your queen out very early. And more often than not, that really is not a good idea to get your queen out so early because you risk losing development and tempo that way. That's why I don't prefer to play the Scandinavian defense at all. Sometimes I do, but most times I don't. So keep that in mind. Anyway, what I do is that I have the white army, I have the white pieces, and I just play it conventionally. Let's just begin since we're at it. E4. E4. And I will be pausing temporarily at times just so you guys can view the board and see for yourself what's going on. So I start with e4, and to get to the Scandinavian defense, this is basically it. This is d5. So what you're seeing here is that you're basically offering a trade right there with the pawns. You can take the pawn if you want, if you're white. But what I like to do is that I like to ignore that and just push the pawn forward. And that's kind of the gist of the title of this video, which is going to be called March On. So that's what I do. E5 is my response. This is what I think the main response should be if you're white when you're met with a Scandinavian defense. I like to just keep moving forward the pawn to E5. So his response, Kieran Hyde, his response is D5. D5. Let's see. C5, excuse me. C5. That's what he does here. F4, knight C6. Knight C6. Now, F4, when I met with something like this with the pawns, F4 is something that I like to play. I could play the knight to F3, which is more conventional, but mainly I want to get as many pawns out as possible when I met with these two pawns in this position. So F4, knight C6. My next move is knight F3. Now I bring out my knight to F3. Bishop F5. I mean, it's not a bad move what he just did. Bishop F5. Bishop B5. And really, that's typical. What I do is just to attack the knight. More often than not, you're going to see me attacking the knight with the bishop in that way. Queen c7, defending the knight. Okay, then I go ahead and castle. I don't waste any time. Temporarily pause. See the position. Castle. A6. Okay, so there we go. The pawn is trying to attack the bishop, trying to drive the bishop back. Sometimes I do pull the bishop back, but other times I just go ahead and take, which is what I'm going to do here. Bishop takes knight, c6 check. That's the 7th move, by the way. And his 7th move in response is queen takes bishop c6. All right. d3, e6. e6. There we go. d3, e6. h3, knight e7. Now, because of the fact that my pawn is right here in e5, he cannot move over here to f6. He cannot move his knight to f6. Otherwise, I would capture it. So obviously, he has to go there, e7. g4, bishop g6. Now, I'm trying to do this to drive his bishop away, and he does. Bishop g6. He retreats a little bit. Queen e2, h5. h5. Here's the board. Queen e2, h5. Now they want my opponent wants the trade-off of pawns right now, which is fine by me. I'm okay with that. Queen g2. Before we can get to that trade of pawns, I got to make sure that my queen is in position to handle that trade for extra protection. And this is what he ends up doing. He goes for the trade. Pawn takes pawn g4, and I return the response with pawn takes pawn g4. Now it's queenside castle. He figured it was time for him to castle, and I don't blame him for that. Knight c3, d4. Now that was kind of telegraphed, but even so, I had to get my knight out. And of course, yeah, he brings his pawn forward to d4, driving my knight back in some way. So I have to move the knight again. And that's exactly what I do, knight e2. Knight e2, and his response, knight d5. There we go. Bishop d2, bishop e7. There we go. I'm pausing right now so you guys can see. Just take a little moment just to see the board. Okay, let's continue. c4, knight e3. Now here, I'm pushing his knight back supposedly, but he's going to go ahead and try to attack my queen with the L-shaped pattern move. So that gives me a decision to make. And so here we go. 3. I have to go ahead and take the knight. Bishop takes knight e3. That's fine by me. And then, of course, the pawn is going to take the bishop. The pawn takes bishop on e3. So far, everything's going well. d4, and then c pawn takes d4. Now, before I play that next move, I know that I'm keeping that pawn hanging. But as you will see in a minute, here's where it's not such a good idea for my opponent to just take that pawn. So yes, I do move the pawn up to d4. Here and hide my opponent, he does take with this pawn. C takes d4. My pawn is left vulnerable, I can see that. But I'm hoping you guys can see what's happening here. Now, okay. The knight from the F, knight from F3. That's going to take the pawn back on d4. Attacking the queen. Pay attention, guys. Queen takes c4. So my opponent takes the bait, assuming that everything's going to be okay for him. And of course, I did not notice this right away, but like somewhat right after this, I did notice this, is that he leaves himself vulnerable. His queen is in front of his king. He's vulnerable. So you got to put a question mark next to that move. Anyway, I go ahead, move my pawn f5. I had not noticed that trap yet, but wait. E takes pawn on f5. G takes pawn on f5. We trade pawns. I'm driving his bishop back momentarily. And that is what he does. Bishop. So I'm driving his bishop back to h5. And for those of you keeping track, that's a 20-second move. Bishop h5. He wants to get his bishop out of danger, and that's fine. But here comes the knockout punch, in my opinion. Now, recall this. Okay? This is where I finally realized that I got him. Now, move 23. Rook from f1 to c1. And my opponent, Kieran Hyde, has no choice but to sacrifice the queen. He has no other choice. He cannot defend it. I mean, he could defend it with a pawn, but that would make no sense anyway. So, queen takes rook, c1 check. Rook takes queen, c1 check. I won the queen that way. So now I have an advantage, which is good. So, in response, to his credit, he continues the game. Let's see. King to b8. He's got to get out of the way. Queen to g3. Now, knowing this, I got to get going with my own queen since I still have my queen. Bishop takes knight on e2. He wanted to get a useful play in with this, taking the knight with the bishop, which is fine. Then I take back with this other knight, e2. Knight takes bishop e2, move 26. And then his response is rook d3. He's trying to protect his last pawn that could possibly get him to promotion. Can't blame him for it, but he's kind of being desperate at this point. So rook d3. I know exactly what to do here because I position my queen accordingly for the diagonal. Watch the diagonal. Discover check. I move the pawn up e6, discover check. With the diagonal attack from the queen. King has to move again. King to a7. So things are breaking down for him now. I don't waste any time. I go ahead. E pawn takes f7. And that's another reason why I titled this video March On, because that's what these pawns are doing, marching on. I'm putting pressure on this, knowing that I want to promote this pawn to a queen at the 8th and final spot, 8th and final rank. And my opponent knows this, and he's going to move rook to f8 to prevent that. He has to. Queen takes g7. That leaves this pawn vulnerable, so I go ahead and take that pawn. Rook to d2. Attacking my knight. I see that. Move my king over to f1 to protect the knight. There's the board. Rook takes pawn b2, but I'm not concerned about that because, like I said, I have the advantage at this point. He's down a queen, and he's got rooks to work with, but he's down a queen. Then the last move of the game was queen to e5. And I was just positioning myself this way to get closer to the opponent king and just to checkmate him. But at this point of the game, time had just run out. It will show on the Lichess website that Kieran Hyde, he ran out of time. So with that in mind, who knows how this game would have turned out. The very fact of the matter is I had the queen on the board still and had the most mobility out of any piece on the board. So chances are I would have just been able to make quick work here. And as you can see here in the back, I was attacking the bishop here on e7. And he was going to have to move his bishop somewhere. Who knows where he would have moved the bishop. I mean, really, he did not have a lot of things going for him. But it's one of those games where it's like, it's a 3-minute game. It's very fast-paced. And more often than not, you can make mistakes in a very fast-paced game. So I can understand that. But anyway, that is one example of how I play against the Scandinavian Defense when I have the White Army. Feel free to leave a comment below as to what you think about this game. Like I said, I'm not an expert by any means when it comes to the game of chess. I just have a general passion playing it. And yeah, like I said before, you're going to see more STVCastle Chess, chess game demonstrations here. Hopefully this is a good enough demonstration for you. Really, I would really appreciate general feedback and just comments about, especially from those of you who love to play the game of chess and you know certain moves here, especially in positions like this. Feel free to leave comments down below, constructive criticism kind of comments down below as to what you would do here in a game like this. So yeah, this was how I play against the Scandinavian Defense. I really appreciate any comments that I get here on this video, and if you like what you see here, please provide a like and subscribe if you like, and notification bell and all that. Share the video with others, and obviously I will come back with more content on chess games. Thank you so much. This is StVCastle signing out. Take care. Bye.